This marks the third part of the third season of this manhwa. If you haven't viewed the previous seasons, you can access it by clicking the I button located above, or the link is provided in description. Let's aim for 200 likes on today's video. To show your support, consider subscribing to the channel. Let's begin our recap video for today's manhwa. The scene shifts to the Dingle Peninsula in Ireland, where Red Squad is engaged in a mission. They open fire on a massive crowd of minions charging out of a dimensional gate. As Red Squad kills the minions in the front, the minions behind use the fallen bodies as shields to advance. Observing this, a Red Squad member notes the cunning strategy, remarking on the intelligence of these grunts for using their comrades' corpses as protection. Meanwhile, Han uses a jump pack and airbit to maneuver in the air, speculating that an Alice is commanding the minions from somewhere. He requests Red Squad to provide cover to Alpha Squad, which is about to target the dragon. At that moment, a red dragon emerges from the dimensional gate. Alpha Squad moves towards the dragon, utilizing their airbits and jump packs, and prepares their weapons for the impending battle with the dragon. As Alpha Squad advances towards the dragon, Jose gathers psychic energy and converts it into fire. As they get closer, Jose unleashes a blast of fire towards the minions, providing support for Alpha Squad. Meanwhile, Han commands Knut to attack the dragon. Knut charges forward with his spear, thrusting it into the dragon's back and causing significant damage. He then slides down the dragon's body with his spear, piercing its neck. As Knut continues his assault, he strikes the dragon's hard shell, but this action causes him to fall. Seeing Knut in danger, Del quickly maneuvers his airbit to save him, exclaiming about Knut's reckless behavior. As Knut falls, Silence observes and thinks that at least Knut is successfully distracting the dragon. Seizing their opportunity, Silence uses his blink ability to teleport and swiftly slice off both of the dragon's wings in one move. He then repositions himself and delivers a critical strike to the dragon's chest, exposing its psychic core. Seeing the core revealed, Han rushes towards the dragon at full speed, pierces the core with his spear, and kills the dragon in midair, causing it to fall. After the battle, Han explains that the red dragon they defeated was a Type 1, which are the same kind that appeared at the beginning of the war. He further categorizes the dragons. Type 2 are abnormal with unpredictable patterns like Jupiter, while Type 3 are immense in size and power, possessing self-awareness, for example including Bahamut and the fossilized dragon Kronos. While taking a shower, Han contemplates the increasing frequency of Type 1 dragon attacks, noting that they are becoming easier for them to defeat but appearing more often. He worries that if this trend continues, all dragons might launch a massive attack within a year, as this was already the second attack this month. After his shower, Han notices a letter on the table. He opens and reads it, discovering it is from his younger siblings. The letter states that they are doing well with the help of the government and express their desire to serve their country one day. Suspicious, Han crumples the letter into a ball, thinking that it doesn't sound like something his siblings would write. He suspects Major Kang's involvement, feeling underestimated, and throws the letter into the dustbin. After discarding the suspicious letter and pondering his actions, Han lies on his bed, contemplating whether he is truly making the right decisions in his current path. 2 weeks later, Alpha Squad is assigned another mission involving a dimensional gate. They board a cargo aircraft and head toward their destination where the next dimensional gate is expected to open. Inside one of the aircraft, Alpha Squad is seated. Knut questions the decision to send 12 reinforced soldiers, suggesting it might be excessive for handling just one dimensional gate. Han responds to Knut's query about the 12 reinforced soldiers by explaining that the large deployment is likely aimed at minimizing damage, considering the devastation caused in previous areas where they were dispatched. Upon hearing this, Del sighs and elaborates that Australia, as the largest sponsor of ARC, expects thorough and effective results due to their significant financial contributions. He emphasizes that ARC is willing to go to great lengths to showcase their efforts in managing dimensional gate threats. Knut reflects on the situation, acknowledging that with 12 reinforced soldiers, they should be well prepared regardless of how many dragons emerge from the dimensional gate. Han suggests they use the travel time to rest, prompting him to close his eyes as the cargo aircraft continues toward their destination. After arriving at the Cairns Air Force Base in Australia, Han addresses his squad, informing them that they can choose their own rooms for lodging, and that they have the evening free with no scheduled activities. Australia, having experienced minimal impact from the war, has attracted talented individuals seeking refuge, making it a powerful nation competing for dominance. Later, Silence sits on his bed, reflecting positively on their accommodations, noting that it's been a while since they stayed somewhere so comfortable during a mission. Meanwhile, Han enters his room, places his luggage aside, and prepares to take a shower. Just then, he receives a message from Silence asking about his plans for the evening. Han responds that he intends to visit Octo after showering. Silence expresses interest in joining him, mentioning that he needs to fix something in his psycho frame. Han and Silence agree to meet in an hour to visit Octo. Meanwhile, Del surveys the building where they are staying and notices a bar where soldiers are enjoying drinks. Curious, Del enters the bar. The bartender, observing Del's youthful appearance, comments to himself that Del looks barely legal to drink. As Del takes a seat at the bar, the bartender asks if he's a soldier from Ark, noting that he hasn't seen Del before. Del glances around and points to a nearby soldier enjoying his drink, indicating that he'd like the same. After a brief wait, the bartender serves Del the requested drink. Del sniffs it and identifies it as smelling like Tabasco, a strong and aromatic beverage. Without hesitation, Del gulps it down, surprising the bartender, who remarks that it's not a drink typically consumed in one go. After drinking the strong Tabasco, Del's face turns red, but he brushes off the bartender's comment and asks for another drink. An hour later, Silence arrives at Han's room and knocks on the door. To his surprise, the door opens slightly from his knock, and Silence assumes it's open. Inside, he sees Han just out of the shower, wearing only a towel. Silence remains silent, but Han notices him and apologizes, explaining he's running late and asks for a moment. Silence closes the door to give Han privacy and waits outside, lost in thought. Meanwhile, Knut notices Silence standing outside Han's room and asks what he's doing there. Using his device, Silence informs Knut he's waiting for Han. Knut asks where they're going, and Silence types they're visiting the engineering team. Knut volunteers to join them, saying he has nothing else to do. Silence hesitates, then shows Knut a message suggesting he should sleep if he's not busy. Nervously, Knut asks why he can't come, and Silence clarifies that it's not that Knut can't join them. As Han opens his door and steps out, he notices Knut outside and asks if he wants to join them in visiting the engineering team. Knut begins to express his desire to go with them, but Silence intervenes abruptly, stating that Knut cannot accompany them. Before Knut can respond, Silence kicks him, causing Knut to fall to the ground in pain. Using his quirk ability, Knut quickly heals himself. Silence turns to Han and suggests they should leave immediately. At that moment, a soldier rushes toward them, calling out Han's name. Clearly out of breath, the soldier urgently asks Han to stop Del. Meanwhile, Del, having consumed a full glass of beer, has caused a few soldiers to collapse on the ground after being struck by him. Witnessing this, other soldiers in the bar recognize Del as a psyker and begin to discuss what actions they should take. Han approaches the chaotic scene and calls out Del's name to get his attention. Han urges Del to stop and suggests they return to his room. Confused by Han's intervention, Del, who is intoxicated, initially stated Han's role and status, muttering about Han being the ever-great squad leader, albeit in a garbled manner due to his drunken state. Han, unable to comprehend Del's slurred words, suggests they discuss things once Del is sober. Del, gathering psychic energy fueled by his intoxication, questions why he's not the one in Han's position. He uses telekinesis to manipulate nearby bottles, causing concern among the gathered soldiers who perceive the situation as dangerous. Ignoring the warnings, Del hurls the bottles towards Han, continuing to slur his words. Han uses a table as a shield to block the incoming bottles, but Del employs telekinesis on bottles pieces and aimed at Han. Swiftly reacting, Han rushes towards Del and delivers a powerful kick to his stomach. The force of the kick causes Del to vomit, much to the disgust of the soldiers witnessing the altercation, who cover their eyes and noses in response to the scene. After Del falls unconscious from Han's decisive kick, Han addresses the soldiers in the bar, apologizing for the disturbance caused. The following morning, Del wakes up early, feeling flustered and embarrassed by his drunken behavior the previous night. He punches the wall in frustration, regretting his actions and resolving never to drink again. Meanwhile, Kurt knocks on Del's door and enters nervously, informing Del that they've been instructed together. He questions Del's early morning agitation and the reason for banging on the wall. Del angrily turns towards Kurt and shouts at him to get lost, slamming the door shut forcefully. The impact causes the door to hit Knut's face, resulting in a nosebleed. Knut reflects on feeling like everyone is treating him as a punching bag lately, wondering if it's just his imagination. The day the Alpha Squad arrives at the Australia Cairns Air Force Base, Del sits on his bed reflecting on a recurring nightmare he's been having. In the nightmare, he is surrounded by dead soldiers who plead for help as they approach him. Del is unable to speak or move as they grab hold of him. Struggling to sleep due to these nightmares, Del wonders if reducing his dosage of battle stimulants is the cause. Seeking some form of relief, Del wanders around the facility and finds a bar where soldiers are enjoying drinks. Hoping that drinking might help him sleep, Del gulps down a glass of alcohol. The bartender, noticing Del's actions, remarks that it's not a drink meant to be consumed quickly. Ignoring the advice, Del brushes off the bartender and demands another drink. Del reflects on the necessity of battle stimulants for reinforced soldiers before combat. These stimulants induce an aggressive state that suppresses fear and guilt, but also reduces judgment and psychic control. Recently, Del has been taking half the usual dosage to maintain some control over his abilities, fearing complete suppression would leave him vulnerable to overwhelming fear from dragons. Frustrated by these thoughts, Del continues drinking, seeking solace in alcohol. Later, Del's pent-up aggression manifests when he punches a soldier, leading other soldiers to restrain him. In that moment, Del recalls his recurring nightmare and taps into his psychic powers. Using telekinesis, Del forcefully throws the soldier away, freeing himself from the grasp of the soldiers. Del, standing still and grappling with his inner turmoil, questions the soldiers, shouting that without him, they would all perish, as he believes he's trying to protect them. Han arrives on the scene and calls out to Del, urging him to cease his actions immediately. Confused by Han's intervention, Del asks who Han is, referring to him sarcastically as the ever-great squad leader. Del questions how Han, the only member of ARC who doesn't take battle stimulants, manages to maintain his composure and effectiveness. Del, using his telekinetic abilities, seizes bottles from nearby shelves, expressing his frustration at why Han is chosen over him. Del hurls the bottles at Han, who defends himself by using a table as a shield. Undeterred, Del tries to use the shattered glass to attack Han again, but Han swiftly closes the distance and delivers a forceful kick to Del's stomach. In the present, all members of Alpha Squad are assembled in the Major's office. The Major addresses Han, questioning whether Del's actions caused any fatalities at the bar. Han reassures the Major that no one was killed as a result of Del's disturbance. After the Major sighs in relief that no fatalities occurred due to Del's actions at the bar, he comments on the supposed rule against drinking. As they leave the Major's office, Han reflects on the soldiers' leniency towards bar fights, especially given Del's status as a psyker. He wonders about Del's intentions and regrets not being able to ask him directly again. Meanwhile, Del chastises himself for his behavior, feeling regretful and angry at his own actions. He resolves never to drink again, aligning his thoughts with Han's determination to stay away from alcohol. Han continues to ponder that Del's outburst was a minor incident compared to the impending battle where numerous lives will be at stake. The next day, all squads prepare for battle wearing their second-generation psycho frames, indicating readiness for the upcoming mission. While wearing their psycho frames, Dmitri, the squad leader of Noble One, proposes a bet to see who can behead the dragon first. Octo immediately chastises them, reminding them of the seriousness of their mission and the danger they face. Han acknowledges their spirit but cautions against underestimating their formidable foe, the dragon. Suddenly, alarms sound throughout the base, signaling an emergency, and the entire facility begins to descend underground. Octo observes the base sinking and expresses surprise at the development. Shortly after, a massive wall emerges around the base, armed with heavy weaponry, transforming it into an impregnable fortress. Witnessing these defenses on the screen, all present are impressed by the transformation of the base into an iron fortress. Octo reflects privately on the strategic foresight behind these defenses, realizing that Australia could potentially emerge as a future superpower if they continue to innovate and defend against the ongoing war. As psychic energy begins to gather, signaling an imminent battle, 3 squads of reinforced soldiers arrive in aircraft above the base. Han, seated in one of the aircraft, outlines the strategy. Local soldiers will handle the minions, while their squads will focus solely on the dragon. Dmitri questions Han's confidence, wondering if he possesses inside knowledge. Han remains composed, hinting at his strategic insights without divulging specifics. Suddenly, a drone provides visual confirmation of the dimensional gate opening. The base's alarm blares, announcing the appearance of the gate and instructing to prepare for engagement. The base's heavy weaponry, including a railgun, is directed towards the gate, prompting Octo to comment on the base's extravagant defense measures. As the dimensional gate opens, a massive number of minions flood out, including the second form of the death worm, which unnerves Del and Silence due to its size and danger. Knut expresses concern over their immense size, comparing them to the caterpillar-like form they previously encountered. He suggests intervening to handle such formidable monsters. Meanwhile, as the minions advance towards the base, the railgun deployed by the base opens fire, inflicting significant damage on the approaching minion force. The powerful barrage surprises Octo, who is taken aback by the sheer force and effectiveness of the railgun's firepower. Alice reacts swiftly, ordering the minions to retreat from the base in response to the devastating attack. Dmitri, impressed by the railgun's impact, expresses admiration and humorously asks if they can acquire such potent weapons for their own use. Knut adds a practical note, jokingly cautioning Dmitri about the recoil of such powerful weapons, suggesting it might be too much for him to handle. Dmitri raises the question of strategy, wondering aloud what their approach should be if the dragon is smaller in size. Meanwhile, the railgun continues to decimate the enemy minion forces, showing its relentless effectiveness. Han takes charge, urging the squad to focus as their moment approaches. Just then, a dragon emerges from the dimensional gate, prompting immediate action. Simultaneously, the base detects the dragon's emergence and confirms it as a Type Blue. An announcement follows, instructing to fire at will. The railgun fires at the dragon, but to everyone's surprise, it has no effect on the formidable creature. Octo observes the failed attempt and directs the squad, emphasizing that it's their turn to intervene. He commands them to descend and eject assault pods, signaling the beginning of their direct engagement with the dragon. As the assault pods deploy, the blue dragon notices and begins preparing a powerful dragon breath attack. The squad members become tense, realizing they have been detected, and brace themselves for the imminent breath attack. As the Type Blue Dragon launched its devastating breath attack towards the assault pods, one of them containing Del Simon was hit and destroyed. Han, witnessing this, anxiously called out Del's name, concerned for his teammates' safety. Inside the assault pod, Del activates his psychic shield just in time to protect himself from the dragon's breath attack. Despite surviving the initial attack, the destruction of his pod leaves him free-falling from the sky. Han, worried about Del's condition, asks if he's alright. Del responds with a mix of bravado and concern, acknowledging that he's fine for now but realizing the danger of falling from such a height. Meanwhile, the other members of Alpha Squad successfully land on the ground using their airbits. Han quickly reacts, throwing 3 airbits towards Del in an attempt to slow down his descent. Del manages to hit each airbit in succession to cushion his fall, but the impact still creates a cloud of dust upon his landing. Once the dust settles, Del, feeling the pain from the rough landing, comments on his discomfort, exclaiming in frustration. As the aftermath of Del's rough landing settles, Knut approaches Del and extends a hand towards him, expressing relief that Del survived the fall. Del responds gruffly, telling Knut to go away, perhaps still frustrated or in pain from the ordeal. Meanwhile, Han gathers the Alpha Squad and advises them to conserve their energy for the upcoming battle. He acknowledges the grim situation they are facing, a Type Blue Dragon, and the dimensional gate from which it emerged has not yet closed. Knut, seeking clarification, asks if the prophecy they received was incorrect once again. Han agrees, suggesting that the prophecy may have been inaccurate. However, he maintains a positive outlook, noting that they are well prepared with a dedicated squad assigned to handle each type of dragon they encounter. As the battle intensifies, Han and the Alpha Squad observe 3 additional dragons emerging behind the Type Blue Dragon, 2 black dragons and 1 silver dragon. One of the black dragons swiftly kills the silver dragon and begins consuming its core. Witnessing this development, Han realizes that the appearance of the silver dragon has altered the expected prophecy. Han quickly takes charge, assigning each squad a dragon to confront. He commands Alpha Squad to engage the Type Blue Dragon directly, while directing the Noble and Purple Squads to handle the 2 black dragons, designated as Black A and Black B. Dmitri from the Noble Squad acknowledges the orders, preparing his squad to engage Black Dragoner. He expresses determination and readiness for the fight, eager to confront the powerful adversary. During the battle, the dragon prepares a powerful breath attack aimed at Dmitri. Using his airbits and jump pack, Dmitri skillfully evades the deadly assault. As Dmitri dodges the attack, he reflects on a past conversation with Han where he mentioned his prowess in Sambo, a martial art he has been mastering since childhood. Dmitri humorously suggested he might even try strangling a dragon if needed. Now, as Dmitri maneuvers on the dragon, he reconsiders the impracticality of strangling it due to its thick neck. Instead, he decides to focus on breaking its wings. Dmitri swiftly moves towards the dragon's wings, grabbing hold of one with the intent to disable it. As the battle intensifies, Han charges up his Golden Fist electric attack and descends upon the blue dragon, striking it directly. He commands the other members of Alpha Squad, including Knut and Silence, to attack as well. Together, they coordinate their efforts, cutting the dragon's wings and inflicting significant injuries. Han then delivers a decisive blow to the dragon's core with his spear, successfully killing it. The Australian soldiers monitoring the battle on screens react with jubilation upon witnessing the dragon's defeat. Octo expresses amazement at how quickly 3 dragons were neutralized, declaring that Type 1 dragons are no longer a threat. Meanwhile, in the control room of Australia's Cairns Air Force Base, a report comes in stating that there is no further activity from the minions near the dimensional gate. It's confirmed that all dragons have been annihilated. However, just as the base personnel begin to relax, a massive explosion rocks the base, causing severe structural damage. Octo, caught in the midst of this chaos, demands to know what's happening. The base commander, injured by the blast, curses the situation. Another officer explains that a gate has formed inside the base itself, leading to this unexpected catastrophe. As the base celebrates the victory over the dragons, unexpectedly, death worms in their third form emerge from the dimensional gate. These creatures immediately begin self-destructing throughout the cairn's Air Force base, causing confusion and chaos among the soldiers stationed there. The soldiers, taken by surprise, attempt to fend off the death worms, but the explosions triggered by their self-destruct start spreading rapidly across the facility. Meanwhile, Octo manages to establish communication with Han amidst the unfolding catastrophe. Octo informs Han that the base is being devastated, with almost complete destruction imminent. He explains that there are no available transports for evacuation, and reinforcements are unavailable. Octo urgently implores Han and the others to survive no matter what happens. In the midst of this crisis, a soldier advises Octo to evacuate immediately. Before any further action can be taken, an explosion rocks the area where Octo is located, intensifying the dire situation unfolding at the cairn's Air Force base. After Octo disconnects his communication with Han due to the chaos and destruction unfolding at the cairn's Air Force base, Clint expresses frustration and confusion. He questions whether their victory over the dragons was in vain, given the sudden attack by the death worms. The entire squad, including Han, becomes angry and unsettled by the turn of events. Han nervously contemplates the possibility that the dragons were used as bait, realizing that they might be underestimating the power of the dragon army. Meanwhile, the dimensional gate begins to gather psychic energy once more, indicating that another threat is emerging. Han immediately recognizes the danger and orders everyone to retreat while they still have the energy to do so. Dmitri, filled with anger and determination, opposes Han's decision to retreat. He sees it as cowardly and suggests wiping out the emerging threat immediately to prevent further losses. Han, concerned about the situation escalating, nervously tries to reason with Dmitri to prioritize their survival. Following the blast that injured Octo and caused chaos at the Australia Cairns Air Force Base, a soldier noticed Octo's condition and quickly organized assistance. Two soldiers supported Octo as they moved toward safety, with one reassuring Octo that transport was ready for evacuation. Octo, however, insisted they head towards water, aware that the skies were now controlled by the enemy. Meanwhile, the air forces engaged in a fierce battle against the third form death worms that had emerged from the dimensional gate. Despite their efforts, the air forces were overwhelmed, leading to a massive explosion that exacerbated the chaos and destruction at the base. Back with Han and his squad, Han nervously called out to Dmitri. He informed Han that the noble squad had agreed to engage the minions in battle. With no dragons present, Dmitri believed they could hold out until evacuation arrived. He offered to buy Han time to retreat if that was his decision. Han, troubled by the potential repetition of past losses like Amir, Ms. and the Blue Squad, made a decisive call to halt the noble squad. This action was driven by his determination not to let history repeat itself. Hearing this, Del used his telekinetic ability to hurl a stone at Dmitri, striking him on the back of his head. Dmitri, furious at the unexpected attack, swiftly turned and seized Del by the neck, demanding to know his motive and asked does he has a death wish. Del retorted, calling Dmitri out for possibly being addicted to battle stimulants and reminding him of their vulnerability once their psychic energy depletes. Han intervened, agreeing with Del's assessment and cautioning Dmitri about the risks of encountering additional dragons or unforeseen threats. Dmitri, realizing his error, released Del and apologized, admitting he should have considered the situation more carefully. As Del remained silent in response to Dmitri's apology, Han attempted to engage him, but Del brushed him off, expressing his disinterest in conversation and urging the group to keep moving. After the psychic beam disrupted their communication devices, Han and his squad quickly took off their helmets to silence the ringing. Han assessed the situation, noting that their communication equipment was completely dysfunctional and emphasizing the urgency of their circumstances. He urged everyone to move out. Hill drew a comparison to a previous incident in Shinwiju, highlighting the recurring nature of their communication troubles in similar situations. Dmitri pointed out that despite having traveled quite a distance from the base, they were still within the zone where communication remained blocked. Han sensed an ominous feeling, suspecting they were being actively pursued or monitored. Before he could delve further into his thoughts, Dmitri proposed heading to a nearby village where they might find functional wired communications. Han agreed, noting that since the area had been evacuated due to emergency sirens, they would likely encounter no one there. Considering their immediate needs, Han realized that while they wouldn't solve their communication issue by going to the village, they could at least find food. With that in mind, Han instructed the squad to move quickly towards the nearby village. Alexander Lekori participated in a virtual meeting with top-ranking officials from various countries, communicating via digital avatars that concealed their identities. One of the members immediately criticized him, stating that he had failed as the chief of staff. Lekori defended himself, asserting that ARC hadn't failed yet. It was the Australian army that had faltered. However, his defense was cut short by another member who pointed out that regardless of blame, ARC had failed to defend against the dimensional gate, which marked a troubling start to the impending war. The discussion among the officials turned towards the strategic implications of the gate opening in Australia. Some members saw this as a temporary relief for other continents, but another argued that the threat posed by the minions, who could teleport, would eventually spread beyond Australia. Lekori privately dismissed their assurances as unsubstantiated. Faced with the gravity of the situation, Lekori challenged them, asking what alternative they proposed. Shockingly, one member suggested the use of nuclear weapons as a solution. This proposal stunned Lekori. During the intense meeting at ARC, one of the Australian members vehemently opposed the suggestion of using nuclear weapons against the minions. Alexander Lekori noted the distinctive Australian accent, indicating this member was likely the highest-ranking official from Australia. Another participant compared the minions to cancer cells, suggesting that drastic measures were necessary to completely eradicate them. They proposed a vote on using nuclear weapons as a solution, prompting Lekori to suspect that some members might exploit this crisis to eliminate Australia, viewed as a strong competitor. As the discussion unfolded, more members began to support the use of nuclear weapons, arguing that it was a lesser evil compared to the potential extinction of humanity. They reasoned that once the immediate threat was neutralized, they could rely on psycho frames for further defense. In contrast, the Australian member visibly distressed and fell to the ground, adamantly opposing the use of nuclear weapons. Despite his plea, others dismissed his concerns as irrational, asserting that they were making a necessary and tough decision for the greater good of humanity. Observing the scene, Lekori grew increasingly skeptical of their motives, sensing a duplicitous agenda among the members. He questioned whether their drastic actions would truly lead to victory in their ongoing war against the dragons, fearing the consequences of such a reckless approach. Dmitri forcefully kicked open the door of an apartment, causing it to break and fall to the ground. Inside, members of the Purple Squad began checking the TV channels and found that all were down. Some members started eating the food they found, while others continued searching for more. Meanwhile, Silence was making a sandwich. Upstairs, Han opened the circuit board and connected his communications device to the local network. At that moment, Silence approached Han and offered him a sandwich. They both sat on the floor, and while Han ate, he asked Silence if he had eaten. Silence typed a response he already ate. While the communication device picked up signals, Silence and Han didn't notice. Silence typed to Han, asking what he wanted to do when the war ended. Han, after some thought, replied that he had never considered it before but would probably go back home to see his siblings. Silence immediately typed that he would come with Han to see his siblings. Han smiled and agreed. At that moment, the communication device connected to the local network started an alert warning. Both Silence and Han quickly moved towards the device. Han observed the alert and identified it as a plan of action from Ark, indicating the nearest pickup area was a mountain 15 kilometers southwest. He noted that the skies were unsafe, so they would need to travel there on their own. Han urged Silence to leave, saying they had stayed there for too long. As the minions gathered outside the building where the three squads were assembled, a death worm self-destructed, causing damage to the building. Han quickly assessed the situation and ordered everyone to check on their squad members and switch over to local networks for communication. Once communication was established, Han, speaking as Alpha 1, outlined the plan. He would send coordinates for their destination and confirm that the route would be suboptimal to evade pursuit. Considering their dwindling psychic power, Han decided that he and Silence would stay behind to delay the minions, while the others would split into two groups to pass through points B and C and regroup at the final destination. Mitri expressed concern about Han's decision to stay back, questioning if he would be all right. Del, recognizing Han's sacrifice for their safety, volunteered to stay back as well. Knut suggested that they all stay together as the Alpha Squad. Han instructed Knut to support Del, who had been injured during the landing. Surprised, Knut asked for clarification, and Del downplayed his injury as a minor crack, assuring them he wouldn't be a burden. Han reassured Simon, emphasizing that his decision wasn't a sacrifice, but a calculated move for their survival. He urged everyone to trust his plan and survive to reunite later. Explosions from the minions' attacks continued to shake the building. Knut reluctantly agreed, while Del looked dejected. The group then split up as Han had directed, exiting the building through different routes. Han and Silence charged at the minions outside, with Silence skillfully wielding his sword and Han using a gun to conserve his psychic energy. Han thought it was best to rely on firearms until absolutely necessary to use his psychic abilities. One of the groups crossed a river, with a member expressing disbelief at the obstacle. Knut explained it was to obscure their trail and internally worried about their dwindling psychic power and Han's well-being, given the prototype likely consumed even more psychic energy. As the group continued, Han fought off enemies with his gun until he ran out of ammo. He then switched to his spear, efficiently dispatching the approaching foes. Han instructed Silence to proceed to point C and wait, emphasizing it as an order when Silence hesitated due to the dire situation. Reluctantly, Silence complied, thinking of Han's survival and their hoped for reunion, while Han continued to fend off werewolves with his spear. After a while, Han was climbing a hill, breathing heavily. He sat down by a tree, thinking he was at point C and assumed Silence had gone ahead to the pickup point. He planned to rest briefly before moving on. Closing his eyes and tilting his head back, Han was startled by an Ellis hunter trying to kill him. He quickly attacked and killed the hunter, commenting on the mutual surprise. Han then reflected on his ability to sense everything with psychic energy as if through smell or hearing. Sensing invisible enemies nearby, Han readied his spear and challenged them to come at him if they wished to die. Meanwhile, at the pickup point, soldiers formed a defensive circle around 3 aircraft, ready with their guns. The soldier in charge at the pickup point observed Silence approaching and immediately contacted higher-ups, identifying him as Alpha 2. He reported that Alpha 1 was not with him. The higher-up inquired if Silence was alone, to which the soldier confirmed. The higher-up communicated that they couldn't delay any further. The soldier, knowing the urgency of the situation, felt the pressure from the orders to retrieve Alpha 1 at all costs. He urgently instructed Silence to board the aircraft, emphasizing the imminent nuclear threat if they remained any longer. Silence complied, casting a serious glance at the soldier. The soldier, visibly nervous, reiterated the urgency and boarded Silence onto the aircraft. Shortly after, the aircraft departed swiftly from the pickup point. Han arrived at the pickup point, battered and bloodied from the battle with enemies. He scanned the area anxiously, only to find no aircraft in sight, prompting a sinking feeling of potential failure. Just as despair began to settle in, he heard the familiar sound of aircraft wings approaching. A soldier informed Han that he had barely made it, addressing him as Alpha One. Han quickly secured himself with a rope lowered from the aircraft, and they began their journey towards Ark. Despite the relief of narrowly escaping, the atmosphere inside the aircraft was solemn and tense. Reflecting on his earlier confidence about Ark needing him and the balance of power tipping in his favor, Han realized his arrogance. In the present moment, he acknowledged his mistake. Ark still held the upper hand, and he had taken their support for granted. This realization struck him hard, especially now that it was too late to rectify his oversight. After a nuclear weapon struck the Australia Cairns Air Force Base, the aircraft carrying Han and the others trembled from the impact. Del reassured the group that they should be far enough from the blast radius by now, cannot question the magnitude of the explosion, expressing concern over its impact. Han, deep in thought, realized the extent of Ark's power. They controlled everything, including the fate of reinforced soldiers like them. He pondered the dire implications if the war were to end with Ark's dominance, leaving their lives at their mercy. A few days later at Ark, Oracle inquired about the status of the kids who had been on the recent mission. John informed Oracle that everyone had returned safely. Curious about Han, Oracle specifically asked about his well-being. John, noticing Oracle's keen interest in Han, responded by acknowledging the intrigue around him. Oracle expressed her perplexity, mentioning that she had attempted multiple times to foresee Han's future but had been unable to discern anything. Despite this inability to see his future, she found it remarkable that Han was still alive. John acknowledged that Han seemed to defy conventional expectations wherever he went. However, Oracle expressed a fatalistic view, suggesting it wouldn't be surprising if Han were to die at any moment. Oracle then pleaded with John to allow her to return home before she died, despite John's explanation that the place was now desolate with nothing left. Oracle persisted, asking to go there to sketch, believing John could facilitate this due to his authority at Ark. John, with a saddened expression, apologized and began to leave, unable to fulfill Oracle's request. In frustration, Oracle shouted at John, expressing her disappointment and accusing him of betraying their past relationship. She threw the teacup John had given her and broke down in tears, overwhelmed by her longing and frustration. This marks the conclusion of the third part of the third season of this manhwa. The fourth part of the third season will be uploaded soon. To show your support for the channel and help speed up the release of recaps for your favorite manhwa, please consider subscribing to the channel. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video.